Please fasten your seatbelts. We're ready for takeoff.
I associate simple with consistency, the drive to win, and in short, I guess Navi as well. You just can't simply exclude Navi, as he's been on this team for 5 years now. I'm ready. Let's get started.
Do you want me to do it just for the sake of it?
I told him I'd be willing to do it for 2 Pfizer doses.
Let's just roll like this, or wait for Kit to leave?
Yeah, I get it. You rephrased the question, and now I need to think of the right word. When I met Sasha, he was pretty green.
Can you repeat the question? Sorry, I kind of just had a mind blank for a second.
I'm gonna be kind to Sasha, and hopefully he'll return the favor. I guess a cold one would be pretty nice for this talk right about now. There's a time when Sasha and I were partying hard.
Tell us.
Niet.
I have a simple yet complicated question. Simple or Zyval?
Yeah. GG, baby. First time I heard it simple was back in 2013 in Kiev at Cyberzone, which, at the time, was hosting the LAN qualifier for one of the largest Counter-Strike tournaments, ESWC. There were only 1 or 2 slots at stake, and he was facing Blade's team in the semifinals, featuring Bondik, Prizrak, and I can't quite remember who else. The fact of the matter is that they were considered one of the best teams in the region at the time, and one of the main contenders for the ESWC qualification spot. In the semifinal of the event, they were up against a bunch of no-name guys, and Simple, Arch, and I think Retric, Teddy, maybe Smike? Blade's team was up 15-14 at one point, whereas for the other team of no-name guys, Simple was posting 29 or 30 kills. However, they ended up losing the game. There was one map, last chance, and they dropped it. Then they had to play a third-place decider, while Blade and his team moved on to the finals. This match was probably the first time I noticed him as a player and their team, since they had made a statement in the local Ukrainian scene with this close game. I'm sure that the guys he was playing against, and doing so well against, remembered him from that moment forward. Especially considering it was around the same time as Simple started to actively attend AIM tournaments at Cyber Arena during StarLadder Finals, beating Shox, Scream, Angel, and other high-profile players in a 1v1 format. It wasn't too big of a deal, but then that nickname started showing up at every StarLadder Finals. He was playing against pro players and not just onlookers and fans. It didn't go unnoticed. It was nearly impossible to overlook a player like this, with him aiming on par against the world's best in 2013. It was 2012 or 2013 when CSGO came out. I think 2012 after all. We had made a very late switch to the game and started practicing against certain teams at the time. There was this team called Land Dodgers from Kiev, and we played a couple practice games against them. We weren't really good at CSGO at the time, but it was enough to steamroll any local team. However, there was this one guy for the Land Dodgers who was really standing out. It was still the early stages of CSGO, and he was dropping 20 or 25 kills against us. We'd hit a bomb site, take down his teammates, and plant the bomb, but somehow, some way, Simple always managed to kill 2 or 3 of us. I can vividly remember Simple was really good at the time. Then he was playing in some AIM tournaments at StarLadder, which had him winning some laptops and tablets. It was while we were warming up on stage before facing another European team for the tournament we were about to play in. s1MPLE was standing right there in the middle of a dedicated setup just for him for playing in the AIM tournament. He was a kid, maybe in 8th or 9th grade. So how could I let him spend a night at an internet cafe? Then, one time Alexei called me and said, "Mom, come get Sasha. He won a monitor and some tablets." I just sent him home in a cab. I was like, "Excuse me? Come again? What did he win?" He comes in carrying a monitor, speakers, and some PC component. I don't know what it's called, but as well as a tablet. Then he won another tablet. He would always go there and get first place in these AIM map events. That's how he ended up at Flipside Tactics, I believe it was, getting noticed by Blade on the back of constantly coming out on top. If I'm not mistaken, Flipside was the first team where Sasha played under Blade's leadership. His previous teams had just been mixes or a bunch of friends playing together. And then he got picked up by Blade. Those were some pretty wild times. As everyone remembers, there was a lot of talk around their team and their interpersonal relationships, all of the tension, and the different comments being made. It's all pretty fresh in my mind still. When I met Sasha, he was very young and raw with little knowledge about the game of Counter-Strike itself. And I was just trying to share mine with him because the Counter-Strike Global Offensive ecosystem is not particularly complicated or evolved. And to be honest, as a product of the game, Sasha wasn't a pro at the time, but rather just a gamer who wanted to play and also wanted to win. Sasha didn't have the best reputation back in the day, and it could be chalked up to him being too young, or perhaps inexperienced, or reckless about a lot of things, and doing before thinking. It's okay now, and him having a quick temper and inner rage about embarrassing and or awkward moments might partially make him stronger in the game itself, but it was also the case outside of it, as he could often lash out and go about insulting someone. I'd pin it on him being too young at the time and his temperament.
The first time I actually saw him and actually got to know him as a player and really take note of what everyone was talking about, not necessarily toxicity, but the skill-wise, was when I went to the Star Ladder finals that were March of 2015. Don't ask me the exact dates, end of March. And that was when I got to know him. And he didn't speak much English at the time. He was young, he was bold. You know, he had a guy like Blade in-game leading who's very strict and very regimented, and I think that was difficult for s1MPLE, and it certainly created some tensions in that team. But that was when I first took notice of him. And then I saw him more throughout that year, including at ESWC in Montreal, where things certainly, I think, really redefined his career, the decisions that he made prior to that event and after that event, and obviously meeting a guy like Hiko.
I think the first time I ever heard about Sasha was in 2014 or 2015 or 2016. I don't remember exactly which one. I didn't really know much about him at all, and I ended up getting messaged by the owner and the management of Flipside at the time. And they asked me if I wanted to go and stand in for their team at ESWC in Montreal, I believe it was. And I was told by their management, by their owner, that s1MPLE kind of requested me by name. I mean, I didn't know him before that. I never talked to him. I don't think I've ever even heard of him before that. That was like the first time I ever met him, and also the first time I ever talked to him was actually at that ESWC in Montreal that I rang for his team, like I stood in for his team. I know that at the time, Simple's reputation wasn't the greatest, especially like in this flip side and earlier days. I personally wasn't super aware of it. I don't know if that was just me not being in touch with the CIS or the EU scene as much as I could have been. But I definitely know that at the time, the team that I was playing with at that time, one of them was like, you know, oh man, you're going to play with Simple's team. Simple's, you know, he's kind of a toxic dude. He has a really like hard personality to work with. He's really good, but he seems like, you know, he just seems like kind of a jerk to his teammates. Simple and I just had a really good bond from the start. You know, I could tell that walking into there, he immediately just had respect for me, and he always was like, him and I just hung out a lot at that tournament, and him and I talked a lot at that tournament. I mean, there was a bunch of pictures we took together and posted them, and you know, I felt like I was kind of like person that he wanted to be, like a streamer and maybe more of a mentor at the beginning. And then we just started talking a lot during that event, and afterwards we kept in contact a little bit. We talked here and there, definitely not that much.
I first encountered him at this 1v1 aim duel tournament, which he won. And I ended up placing pretty high too. Then we invited him to join our team. And let's face it, Sasha didn't have the best personality at the time. Though, as bad as his temper was in the game, he was a good kid and nice to talk to outside of it. I remember he never held back when talking about how well or how badly his teammate played. He could even humiliate or cuss someone out in the middle of the game, regardless of their age. He didn't have a sense of where to draw the line, when to stop, and when enough was enough. I've always tried to build my team to ensure it works as a unit rather than relying on individuals. At the time, Sasha couldn't. I mean, he did understand everything. We got along just fine in practice and outside of the game, but whenever there was a conflict, mainly between him and someone on the team, it was impossible to work in that atmosphere. You can't really achieve big things like that. He's had his share of raging on stream, and we all remember the crazy things the young Simple did. However, all of this stuff becomes outgrown, and people become wiser and more mature with age. Sasha's biggest trait is his constant drive to win, which might have affected his personality since he always had to win regardless of what he was playing. Matchmaking, 1v1 aim duels, official matches, FPL. I think it's him striving to win every game that may have partially caused his emotional outburst. He was proving he was one of the biggest talents, but his ESL ban put a bit of a damper on the growth and wasn't allowing him to fully unlock his potential. Because not every team would want to deal with a player on a regular basis, even if insanely talented, that's banned from playing ESL events. ESL was holding a good half of all the large tournaments at the time, and the ban was a big deal. I can't recall why he was banned, but I remember Sasha said it was something about him using some software in 1.6, like Skin Changer or something like that. I can't quite put my finger on what it was exactly, but I do have a memory of him saying it had nothing to do with CSGO. The ban was about to expire when we wanted to bring him into the team, so we figured to give it a go and see how he would do first before we committed. You know, it's like a small media bomb being dropped. And I was like, yeah, okay, nice hype there. However, just having the potential and all the hype is simply not enough. It's also very important to post results in matches. In this case, it was fun watching a player who was either supposed to go big or who was supposed to fade away as a star. He had joined one team, then joined another one, and jumping around here and there, playing on Hellraisers, Flipside Tactics, and so on. Basically, he's been on every top team in our region since he had started playing the game.
Yeah, so the first time I heard about s1mple was, I think he played in a team called Worst Players, like way back, and he did like a crazy play on Cash, I think, with the Deagle. And I don't think not that long after that, I played against him when he was in Hellraisers, actually. And he did a crazy clip against us. I think he aced us with the Glock.
The sickest new edition of Hellraisers. In a 1-on-3, does take down the first player. The jump shot, what was that? He took down Device. Unbelievable stuff there from s1mple. What is this we're seeing? s1mple with the most ridiculous pistol clutch I've seen.
From that point on, everyone knew that he was good, but not how good he was, right? And yeah, of course, as you said, like moving into Liquid, he was their carry player, and from there on, it kind of manifested which player he is, I think.
Hiko saw this guy as a shining light, as a real talent, as someone that he could use to try and chase that dream of, building that dream roster he'd always wanted and was kind of robbed of by the iBuyPower, not by anyone's choices other than iBuyPowers per se, but he finally saw some hope, and I think Sasha really liked Hiko because he was a natural leader. He's a very nice guy, Hiko, very, very easy to get along with, and I think that the stigma was removed. I think Hiko didn't care about all the toxicity that was previously attributed to s1mple. And I think that Hiko, like I say, saw it as an opportunity. So I think that's what led to that bond ultimately. And then Hiko was then with Liquid and obviously made a pitch to the organization and to Sasha, to s1mple, to bring him on board. And it was a big risk, I think, for a guy at that age, but it was proof that s1mple wanted a chance, that he wanted to showcase himself.
And then I eventually ended up joining Liquid after I played, like I stood in for Flipside at that event. I don't know how long it was after that. And we ended up needing a fifth, and I just was thinking, we need we need an opper, and we kind of need a young, more talent never hurts on a roster, especially at that time. It seemed like most teams were going the route of like having a coach that would in-game lead and then just stacking their roster with as much talent as you could. So I thought, like, why wouldn't we just get s1mple? I mean, if we can make it happen, it just seemed like an obvious thing. And obviously, like, my relationship with him, and I think that he wasn't doing the greatest on the team that he was on. I don't remember which team it was, or maybe he wasn't even on a team at all. I think maybe he was like ESL, his like ESL ban had just came up or something. But yeah, I remember being like, guys, I have a pretty good relationship with s1mple. Why don't I just reach out to him and say, hey, Sasha, do you want to come play for Liquid? Do you want to, Liquid will move you to the US, get you a visa, do all that stuff. And I remember Sasha's like initial response to me was, he was a little uncertain right away, but he said, let me talk to my family, let me figure it out, and we'll let you know. And so he messages me the next, like, not less than 24 hours later, probably. If I messaged him at night, he messaged me the next morning. I was like, Spencer, I want to come. Let's do it.
That was just awful. Just imagine. It was 2015. He had graduated from school, and he had enrolled in a linguistics university, going for a major in Chinese. He didn't take his first semester exams in December, and instead came to me and said, Mom, I'm not taking the exams. It's pointless. I'm flying to Los Angeles on February 2nd. He was a 17-year-old kid at the time. I can't quite express how shocked we really were. Where? Los Angeles? What are you talking about, Sasha? I thought he was kidding, but he said, Mom, I'm serious. I already have a plane ticket. I got signed by a team and I'm going to Los Angeles. When Sasha went to the US for the first time, I was extremely happy for him. I wholeheartedly rooted for him and would tell our parents that it was a great opportunity and even a real dream come true. That was really amazing. Firstly, he got to learn the language. And secondly, he gained valuable experience playing with world-class players. Hiko being one of those players. They forged a bond, and Sasha has always spoken highly of him. I believe it was one of the most important periods in his life that had granted him double XP, so to say. It definitely was a good experience, and he was comfortable there. Although, at times, the language barrier and mentality differences made him feel a bit lonesome and quite a bit bored. I mean, after all, being in a foreign country on your own is a bit stressful. He dropped everything, got out of his comfort zone, and relocated to another country. That was when he caught the public spotlight. I assumed that he had made that decision lightly, but eventually, he had to have realized the gravity of the situation. Being in a different country, on a different continent, he was playing and streaming a lot of the time, and even started a YouTube channel, even though I believe he hasn't uploaded anything since then. That move made him a complete professional player. And his stint inside the United States must have been a highly valuable experience for him. The guy is truly gifted, and perhaps the rumors about his personality didn't quite reach the other end of the globe. So they decided to take a chance, and it paid off. In my experience, people with difficult personalities do way better in English-speaking teams. I mean, it's harder to take a dig at others in a foreign language right away, as it takes some time getting adjusted to and getting used to.
DreamHack Masters Malmo. I was up very early one morning. I don't know if I was jet-lagged or I just was a keener that day, but I remember being at breakfast very early, and Simple was the only other one in the breakfast room. So obviously, naturally, I went over and sat down with him and was eating breakfast. And it was at the time that Kusta was brought into the Liquid roster and was supposed to be the AWP player, and had a lot of hype around him coming in as an opper. This was supposed to give Simple a chance to free himself up and be a more hybrid role on the AK or the M4. And I remember sitting at breakfast that morning, and he said, "I don't care who's the op today, I op." And I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "No, I'm opping. Like, I'm picking up the op. I don't care what my teammates say. Kusta sucks." Basically was what he was saying. He didn't directly say that, mind you, but basically he was saying, no, I'm taking that role. That's what I'm doing in this team.
Yeah, I was playing an op role after that, either on T or CT side, I don't recall exactly. But I remember when he would mess up, I wanted to play with the op for myself.
I kind of thought to myself, that doesn't sound healthy. I mean, if the team's not agreeing on that, and Kusta is not necessarily as proficient on the rifles, that's going to compromise and jeopardize a lot of the situations economically, strategically, personality and cohesion-wise, in terms of attitude. So yeah, it was an interesting statement, and I remember thinking, yeah, I don't know how that's going to go. So no doubt, yeah, I think there was some issues within the team, and that Simple could be very selfish at times. And I think that's something he's very much had to improve upon.
I'm not going to say always took his side when there were fights within the team, or there was, the way that he handled himself sometimes. I'm not going to say we never disagreed.
So I think early on, he was like the classic example that you see in sports. This scenario where hand in hand, real talent tends to go with not understanding what the role players have to do, because you're so talented, it's everything about what you're doing. But what you have to learn in a team, unfortunately, is sometimes maybe I can't do what I want to do if I need to help this guy a little bit, because it makes the team stronger. It means we'll win against this particular opponent. They can't just shut me down in that scenario. It was when he did that 1v2 clutch against Fnatic on Cash at the ESL1 Cologne 2016 Major when he was in Team Liquid. When he did this drop down, and that's an example of where the no-scopes don't make any sense. Killing the first guy, you can fluke that, you're really close. When he killed the second guy, long range, it's not supposed to hit that. If I had to guess, you're supposed to have a 1 in 16 chance that shot hits.
They didn't even manage to get a shot off, these two guys right here.
So I remember already in this tournament, he was showing really good form. He'd already beaten out Navi. He's playing against Fnatic. Remember, guys who won majors. They're supposed to go to the final and play SK. It's the rivalry everyone wants to see. And in my opinion, that was one of those Neo moments. That was the moment when Neo stops all the bullets and just can't be killed. He basically just broke the game completely. I remember when I saw that moment, just thinking, I even did a tweet, I think, around that time. I just said, this guy's going to be the best player to ever play CSGO. We have to just we have to get ready for that, because look what he's doing in the game. He was still a very young player at that point in time. He's playing in a team where they don't speak his native language, and they speak bloody American, so it's not like just speaking English is good enough, you know. So I think that whole circumstance, you could just tell in that moment, something really special is going to happen from now on in CSGO.
Everyone started to idolize him, and then I remembered him well from the time when he was on Team Liquid and did that clutch on Cash, which was then commemorated with a graffiti on the wall. That was unreal. It looked like one of those plays that was impossible to pull off, but, you know, Sasha did it. I was casting this game alongside of Uha, and we just started yelling and screaming in amazement. I had to realize that not a single player coming to CSGO from 1.6 would ever be able to make a play like that. And that's because nobody would even think it was possible to. Whereas Sasha knew he could drop down and pull it off. That was an incredible display.
See double smokes in the same place there. Simple just jumping casually into the side. He's going to fall down again. What is this clutch from Simple? Are you serious? What is that? You can't do that, Simple.
But Simple, I don't know, man. If he just comes in with that, there's
nothing. It was a no-scope.
Yeah, there have been tons of plays and in-game situations that seem impossible for an ordinary person in terms of the pressure that comes about during matches. People just tend to avoid dealing with pressure and taking risks in crucial or dire situations. While, inversely, Sasha puts himself forward and takes a risk. And it's his game sense allowing him to make going for it worth it. Sasha has never ceased to amaze me with his game. Even back then, he was really creative, and he very much still is. I'd been looking forward to playing on the same team as him just to see how good he was. Being on Team Liquid, especially considering it was overseas on a different continent in the US, had a huge impact on him. He matured ahead of time and benefited a lot from it. He got to socialize and experience the Western culture itself just by having lived there. He learned their ways of managing a team, the inner workings of an organization, and how individuals operate within their own structure. On top of that, he must have gained media and marketing skills. Because we know it's highly advanced in the US, and they are #1 in this field. I'm sure it was a valuable experience, but I know he was really uncomfortable having been there for so long and at that age, which is why he moved back closer to family and friends. It was a different culture, a different country, miles away from home, and it makes you feel like an outsider.
It definitely wasn't all perfect. We had problems, inner relationship problems within the team, but also just, I know that Sasha had to give up his family, his girlfriend at the time, his friends, and anyone who knows Sasha knows he has a lot of friends he hangs out with. He's close with his parents. He's he had a girlfriend that he literally left to move countries to go play a video game professionally. And so I know that was all hard for him. And I know that it probably got to a point where, sure, we were doing pretty well and we made it to a major grand final and we were able to do these things. But I think that he just ended up missing home.
We were surprised as the doorbell rang at 1 a.m. We opened the door to find Sasha standing there with a suitcase. And I went, "Sasha, what are you doing here?" He said, "Mom, I don't want to live in America anymore." Can you believe that? I told him, "Do you realize that you quit university to go there?" He replied, "I just don't like it there." "What are you going to do now?" And he says, "Nothing. I'm going to play." I was really worried about him because he dropped his studies. And just like any parent, I believe that university was more important than esports. We had a trip planned and he stayed home sitting on the computer all day. I was very concerned about him. Then we get back from the beach and see a text from him. And it said, "Mom, congratulate me. I've joined Navi." The first time I met Sasha was before the transfer. We asked Team Liquid for permission to approach him, and then we did. We met in Kiev and went to a restaurant to have lunch and chat, since it was important for me to get to know him better. He was super nice to talk to, and I didn't notice anything that others attributed to him in-game. It was after that talk that we made the final decision to give it a shot, to give it a go.
Navi came and offered him a spot, and it was just like, he couldn't say no to it. You know, I'm sure, I feel like at the time, his goal was always to get on Navi. You know, like when we would go to events when he was on Liquid, he was always like kind of hanging with the Navi guys, talking to them a lot. Like, you know, I understand that they're, you know, kind of like his region people at the time. And it's why hang out with a bunch of stupid Americans when you can go hang out with those manly Russians and Ukrainians, you know, whatever. But, you know, yeah, we can kind of tell that, like, I knew he always wanted to join Navi. Like, that was his dream team. And when Navi came in and offered him a spot, it just seemed like there was no convincing him to stay anymore. Even making a major grand final and beating Navi in that run, it wasn't enough to convince him to stay and you know.
I had realized that Sasha wanted to play for Navi back at the MLG Columbus Major. We knew about that, our players were aware of that, and he also mentioned it himself. It was really tempting because he didn't just want to leave Liquid or move back home, but specifically, he wanted to join Navi. My first impression of Sasha was very mixed and very cautious. There had been some rumors about his temper and personality, as well as his talent. Meeting Sasha in person, though, it'll really make you like him. When you see him and talk to him, you realize that all the claims you heard about him are quite wide of the mark, actually. He's a really sensible and nice guy. He's totally likable, he's kind, he's friendly, and very sociable. Sure, we had our concerns about his personality and his past. I listened to a lot of TeamSpeak recordings that were on the internet from the time he was playing for Hellraisers and Flipside Tactics. And I could tell that back then, Sasha acknowledged no authority. He was getting out of line and overstepping boundaries often. We brought it up once more before signing the contract with Sasha. And I can assure you that this has never been the case whilst he's been in Navi.
Андрей, не кричи. Не, реально. Сделал ошибку.
Топ, я ничего не говорил.
Ты это сказал, больше не говори. Что вы делаете? Ну что вы... Андрей, блин, спину убить не может, типа, который меня стреляет.
Sasha's arrival was the inpouring of fresh blood to the team, so to speak. He really brought in a new energy and a brand new approach to the game for our team. Everyone had regarded him as a very team-oriented player, and Guardian has even said that Sasha was the best teammate that he had ever played with. His communication was on point, and the ideas he suggested in game really got the team going in a good direction. Early on, it felt like everything was just clicking and that he was right where he was supposed to be. The gap between the old school players and the youngsters wasn't as evident. And I would even go as far to say as the team got rejuvenated.
Yeah, so the thing was, when he joined Navi, everyone thought, actually, this is going to be amazing. Like, this could be the best team, because they already had Guardian, who was really, really good. He was one of the best players in the world still, even though he'd had his injury. And at the time, people forget that Zeus wasn't the in-game leader. He'd just been the support player, and Starix was the in-game leader. But what happened was, Valve did this coaching rule change, and basically, it meant Navi had to use Seized as their in-game leader. So already people were like, oh, okay, maybe it's going to be more like the star players have to carry And their first event, I remember, was the Star Series in Ukraine, actually, and they bombed this event really badly. And so a lot of people were bailing already. They were like, right, the problem is the team doesn't work, you know, he's like too young, too like aggressive, he doesn't fit the culture of the team. And they came to this ESL New York event, and they basically just stormed through the whole event. And I remember, like, they were beating the best teams in the world legitimately, and part of it was Simple was just posting unbelievable numbers. If people remember, that was the one where he had that crazy clip on Mirage with the Deagle, where he just killed like 4 people with 1 Deagle. So already you basically just saw like he was an MVP level player. For people who don't know, that was actually the first event in the history of Guardian's career that was a $250,000 or more prize pool tournament that he won. That's one of the reasons he was in tears after the event.
Winning that tournament in New York was pretty effortless, despite us not even having enough time to properly prepare for it. Since we had a really packed travel schedule and had to fly to New York right away to compete. We were gaining form and momentum over the course of the tournament, and we're just going with the flow of the game. We were securing win after win, and suddenly we found ourselves in the grand final, where we came out on top. That was a pretty unexpected, yet heavily desired triumph, in terms of Sasha joining the team and having a fully stacked roster. Navi had never won ESL 1 New York before. Guardian was crying. It was a great and emotional moment for us all. PRB, who at the time was our head of media, and myself even lost our voices from all of the shouting. We were walking around the city with the trophy at night, and the next day we shaved Eugen's head, who had promised to go bald if we'd won the tournament. I told the guys that if they won the tournament, I would go bald. So they won ESL 1 New York, and we headed out to the park to shave my head. Zhenya Zolotarov shaved my head with some electric clippers. Yeah, ironically, the bald one was shaving me bald. Things got pretty euphoric shortly after Simple joined, but you know perfectly well what followed next.
So a lot of people saw the drop off in results. Like at majors, they're not making the top 4. In tournaments, they don't win. They're just a good team. Maybe they do well in the group stage, but then someone good is going to beat them in the playoffs. It won't matter. And even though he was still a very good player, he wasn't quite the amazing player he was the next year. Like he was like a very, very good player, but there was still a little bit that maybe was raw about his game. And I remember actually a lot of analysts, a lot of experts, people next to me on the desk that I was going to war with, they used to say, believe it or not, that Simple should not use the AWP. He should only let Guardian use the AWP all the time because they thought that's what will fix Guardian's game, you know, if there's just one AWPer. And they thought he's too aggressive, he shouldn't take these crazy peaks, you know, he should play more conservative, he should like learn to, you know, rein his game in a little bit. Like he should, because what they thought was if you watched his style of play, because his aim is really crazy, famously it used to look like he was like not aiming on the corner, like using proper crosshair placement. It looked like he looked where he wanted to. Then he saw you like a Terminator and just snapped onto you and killed you. So they thought this isn't the best way to play the game. But obviously, I mean, that take has aged pretty badly, I would say. Like, I don't know if there's anyone in the history of CS with an AWP who's more deadly. And if you look at it, it's like this great quote from a poem that says, the way out is through it. Like, he had to go through the aggressive playing style to develop what's probably the most dominant playing style we've ever seen since.
I think that every player has to go through a rough patch at some point in their career. We hit a slump post New York, and I guess even without having won a single tournament for a year straight. I believe it was a good life experience for Sasha that really hardened him. He took a share of defeats that had gotten him to the point where it was finally enough was enough. Okay, I don't want to lose anymore. I've learned my lesson. I'm ready to start winning now. It's important for a player that they endure defeat after defeat until they become hellbent on giving it their 110% every single time. They have experienced what it's like to lose, and they don't want to go there anymore. Especially considering Sasha's nature. That period was kind of like a springboard from the bottom. Kind of like a trampoline. And from there, it has only been onward and upward. He wasn't just young, but he was also rather immature at the time. He's always been a ball of fire, He's always playing and practicing a lot, whether it's at night or on the weekends, sacrificing his real life. I'm sure it was a rough period, and besides, he realized it would take fixing the team to start winning. Because if you remember, they were struggling pretty hard at the time.
So yeah, it was very, very actually tense for a whole year because since he came with this baggage from Team Liquid, especially from Flipside, where he was disrespecting legends like Blade, Markov openly in the server, in interviews, basically people thought, right, well, even if he's really good individually, maybe he's bringing the other people down. Maybe he's the reason why Guardian's kind of mentally checked out, especially when Guardian then went to FaZe and immediately became really good again, and FaZe was the #1 team. There was a lot of like narratives competing to try and imply like it's simple, or it's his playing style, or he doesn't understand team Counter-Strike, or, you know, it's not just a 1v1 game, it's a team game, everyone. You can't win by yourself, even though, again, that has aged terribly, because if there's one person who can win by themselves, probably Simple, right?
When the guys from Navi 2010 were playing with Simple, they were saying he was a very difficult person, yet he was able to work wonders in the game of Counter-Strike Global Offensive. Even though he was really hard to work with, he was obsessed with the game and winning, always doing whatever it takes to get the job done. He wasn't always willing to budge or compromise. He would argue back and squabble with older players or even rant at them. He used to rage a lot. However, he would nullify all of that with his insane fragging prowess whilst in tournaments. That was really amazing. And even though it was hard to surprise Zeus and Edward at the time, since both had been great players themselves and seen others do incredible things, as a teammate and a player, Simple still managed to impress them at times. Sasha is a completely different person outside of the game. You can have a heart-to-heart conversation with him, you can discuss any topic, and he's overall really comfortable to talk to. When it comes to practice and playing, he puts his game face on. He becomes demanding, he becomes audacious, assertive, and sometimes even quite a bit snippy. Over the time I worked with him, I would occasionally have mixed feelings because it would be 1 minute that you're just having a nice talk, and the next, things get so heated up that you can't comprehend how, come just a few moments ago, you were bros, and now you're nearly foes. It was very much like blowing hot and cold air all the time. Yeah, he was always keeping us on our toes. I had joined Navi with the goal in mind to take the team back to the top again. We had one of the best players in the world on board, and we had to mix his personality and teenage hot-headedness with our plans and goals, while also making sure that we were all getting along well and that he was comfortable playing the game. The situation as a whole was putting quite a bit of pressure on us, and we were arguing quite a bit at first. I don't mean Sasha and us. Yeah, sure, he was part of it too. But it was because he was all about winning, although he was even more zealous at the time. But as far as I know, he's tamed it down a notch. And he even changed a lot in the last months when we were still teammates. However, back then he would lose his cool a lot, especially when he was putting up big numbers in practices, was often the case. And we ended up losing anyway. He thought the team was to blame since we were underperforming. That's why it would cause tensions, lead to conflict, and that sort of thing.
I would speculate that Zeus had an enormous impact on Simple. Like, first of all, one of the great things about Zeus, It's also maybe the negative if you don't like his style of play, is he is going to play his style of Counter-Strike. It's like a very slow, methodical style of Counter-Strike. There's a concept, there's a lot of push and pull on the sites. He never attacks immediately. Clock's always running down. You think they're not going to get the bomb down in time. They almost always get the bomb down in time. It's a very frustrating style of play. It's actually one of the reasons I've always given Zeus credit. He's one of the only players I've seen as an in-game leader who's been able to match up with the really good Astralis teams. Like, it seemed like he could actually mind game them a little bit and draw them into his game plan, hence the famous ESL1 Cologne result. So to me, if you have a guy like that and you haven't had success as Simple, and someone like that comes in, first of all, if you're smart, you're going to listen to him. You're going to go, look, put me in the situation. Make me Guardian in your team. Make me what Marklov was in your team, the best player in the world in a really good team. So already there's like an impetus that you should probably listen to the guy.
A young player who proved himself really well versus a guy with his baggage, and even his baggage of ego, whose pride it could often hurt. I think there may have been cases of personality clashes or disagreements and frictions, but it was clearly on the surface and was visible online, on social media, and as well as off camera. I'm sure everybody remembers that, so yeah, it wasn't always smooth sailing. To be honest, it was twice as difficult or tough for me. I wasn't used to that, and I felt like a senior player who wanted to come and get the job done without all the stresses. I thought of taking things slowly and going step by step. However, it just wasn't our case. It was taking a lot of energy and effort, though. I realized I had to keep going. But I'm extremely happy that Sasha became the #1 player in the world while I was his captain. I would even go as far to say as even a bit proud.
If you go back in history and you watch some Simple interviews, or when he starts streaming, when Zeus joins Navi, all of a sudden he isn't just like shooting people in the head and then just like, oh, this guy is shit, this guy is good. All of a sudden he's talking about like the Molotov usage, and this is how you correctly take banana with the utility, and do they not understand this team playing? Like, they're just too young. They don't understand that you have to push and pull on this. Like, he's all of a sudden he's getting some of the like in-game leader mindset. So one thing I've known about Simple is he's a very fast learner, and as long as he doesn't think you're an idiot, he's totally open to learning from people. I think that's one of the things. He's a sponge. He steals everything from everyone and makes it his own. So to me, if you're around someone like Zeus and his system is proven, it's going to rub off on you. And I think that's actually one of the reasons why even when Zeus has long been gone, Simple's become a much more cerebral player to me. He's not just like a wild turret. He's a guy who's got the skills and he's got the brain. That means he can dominate the game.
Sasha had respected me because I was older and was his captain, so he tried to be more responsible with me. I mean, things almost never got personal between Sasha and myself. We did have our conflicts and disagreements, a lot of stuff. But whenever we argued, we would always keep it respectful and civil, which would ultimately help get us through difficult situations. He and I would always behave differently, but if we had a fight, we both tried to make amends, to smooth things over and reconcile. We always kept it in check. Sasha would often go from one extreme to another. One moment he thinks that this team he wants to win every tournament with and say, this is a legendary team and we can do great things together. And after a loss, it might turn into the most hated team and make him go, you can't even play the game. Or you're not ready to compete at the highest level. Or something along those lines. There was probably only one time when we were thinking about parting ways with Sasha. And if I remember correctly, it was prior to a large tournament when he was having emotional outbursts during practices. We issued him a yellow card. That's what we call it in our club. But eventually, he got it all under control. And thankfully, we didn't make any radical decisions or changes at the time because of this behavior. In contrast, Sasha's also wanted to leave the team on several occasions, which was partially affected by emotions following certain in-game situations or results at tournaments and events. However, there were no concrete offers or other clubs involved, but rather just emotions talking. The one time he was actually close to going was when MIBR wanted to sign him. Came as a surprise to us that MIBR were going to go for such a drastic roster change and switch their language of communication. The way it all happened was that I got messages from Flamey and s1mple at the same time, saying to me that they had been contacted with an offer and that they wanted to go. Their initial decision was to go ahead and give it a try, because at that point, Fallen and Taco had been two-time major champions and everyone wanted to play with them. Referring to Dota 2, it was something like No One and Solo to Zayats. We obviously didn't want to let Sasha go, and for us, forcing him to stay against his will was not an option either. We ended up speaking and spoke quite a bit as we discussed our potential as a team. From the start, I was outlining what difference communicating in a foreign language and losing a fraction of a second here and there when relaying information could actually make. I also said he'd be getting what's called a pig in a poke if he signed a long-term contract, with having to be away from home and having no idea of whether it would work out or not. Besides all of that, we also couldn't come to an agreement over the transfer fee with MIBR. And they kept going back and forth between whether they wanted to buy out Flamey or not. This also confused s1mple, and he didn't quite understand if they had a clear game plan or strategy at all. Having really good individual players is just not enough, since, after all, it is a team game. It's all about synergy, team play, and being on the same page. The best teams in the world, including us, had reached a level where we could play out a situation, even crucial and tough, intricate ones, without having to communicate a single word. We used to do that, and then you would watch a lot of other teams and just simply go, how? But that was... I reckon everything had happened the way it was supposed to happen, and everyone was satisfied with the outcome. I'm sure it would create a lot of hype, though, and I personally would love to watch that team. We had a family talk and advised him against doing that. We said if he wanted to succeed, he should do it with his team. That's so bad, I shouldn't have gone for it. I'm never winning a major with this team. Nah, that's not exactly how it was. He weighed his options and made the decision. The way I see it, it was the right call not to switch to another team. Because in this case, he was staying in his home city of Kiev with the organization that loved him and that he had good relations with. He was already a legend in this club. So what sense would it make? Just for the sake of sports results? I would get it if he honestly said that he wanted to move to another team to play with Fallen and Coldzera, because he wanted to win a major and he couldn't win one here. Yet, he still stayed with Navi, and it's been, I don't know, how long then? 2 years, give or take? The team has been rebuilding, and it's still moving forward and still staying on top. Yes, they're not the #1 team, but they constantly post results and then go on to make deep runs in tournaments. As far as I'm concerned, Navi produce pretty good sports results. They're okay, they're decent, and he is the key element of this team. I called him when we talked for 30 minutes, or maybe it was more like an hour. I told him that I truly believed we could do better with our roster than they would with Made in Brazil. He made the decision to stay on his own and also informed MIBR of his choice. And then, following his public post, we went on a streak of winning 3 large tournaments in a row, and Sasha would become the #1 player in the world in 2018.
I kind of look a little bit at basketball, and the most successful teams we've had there are always 5 four good players and complementary players. Looking at Simple, comparing maybe him a little bit to Michael Jordan in the sense of that he is so good that you kind of build the team around him. If I have to compare to myself, I'm not that player that good, to be honest. So when you build a team around Simple and around me, you build a different system. And in the sense of that you want to build the system to make Simple flourish and get him in the very best situations all of the time, because he will be the best player to have in 99 out of 100 situations, right? So in my opinion, you would have to build around that, but that also requires that you have still having individually skilled players, because otherwise you will just be bullied on the locations he's not at the map, right?
Simple has a tremendous impact on his teammates, and it affects the emotional states of all of his teammates, as well as even his own. However, it's a major driver overall. He never allows his teammates to slack off. Maybe even when they're sleeping, they have to think about CS and what things need to be fixed or worked on ahead of future games. Not only does this factor enable Simple to improve individually, but also makes the whole team better.
I mean, Simple knows that no one's as good as he is. He knows this, and he just expects that people are going to put in the time. And when people aren't putting in the time, and when people aren't playing to their top level and they're looking, like a different player than themselves, and Simple's team loses, that's when Simple has a problem. That's when Simple is not, or Sasha is not afraid to call someone out to their face like, listen, you're playing bad, you need to deathmatch more. Or, listen, we're losing and you're calling strats poorly. Like, we need to fix that. And, I think that all comes from he just doesn't want to lose, especially if he's playing his game. And, if Sasha is deathmatching 10 hours a day, which I don't know how much he deathmatches now, then he expects everyone to put in the same amount of work and the same amount of effort. And, like I said, he knows that his teammates aren't as good as he, at least back in the day. Like, he knew that he was the best player on the team, but he knew that everyone had the potential to be, their best self. And if he himself is able to put in the 10 hours of deathmatch a day, or watching demos or streaming, if he's able to just play the game a lot and perform, then he feels like his teammates should too. And, if Simple is losing and it's because someone is underworking or underperforming or not being the best selves they can, then that's when Simple, you can tell he gets upset and he starts getting mad. And, I think he's always been like that. I think he hates losing so much that he just wants to win, and he'll try to bring his teammates up, and he'll do whatever he can to make sure that, if you get put in the same situation that you just lost, that next time you're going to win.
Sasha is really demanding. He demands a lot from himself, his teammates, the club, the staff. Even when it comes to media and promotional activities. He pushes everyone around him to work to their best ability. I guess that's the key. I don't think it's about youthful exuberance, but rather quality he's been developing for his entire life. Yes, he's become wiser and more composed over the years, yet he's still demanding and holding himself and everyone around him to a higher standard. And that's what sets him apart from most players. When Electronic joined our team, we buckled down and got on our grind. We even held back-to-back boot camps. Then followed a pretty challenging period with the team that nearly ended in a falling apart. That was when Simple and Flamey were on the verge of leaving, but ended up deciding to stay with our team. I think it provided a massive motivational boost to everyone, because first, Sasha and Igor realized that they had to roll up their sleeves and put in the work since they had chosen to stick around. And then with the rest of the team, having seen how they had just dodged a bullet, got a second chance, also just dug in and plugged away. At the end of the day, it paid off and yielded results. I remember the day Electronic joined the team. I was interviewing him, and we had an extensive talk. Bringing in both young and fresh blood with electronic really helped the team reset and start the process of rejuvenating the overall roster. He hit the ground running and was putting up really good KD numbers, as well as demonstrating great game understanding, which was building up all of our confidence. All that confidence and excitement were helping the team to move in the right direction. However, when things weren't working out, everyone would pull the brake and stop to look into what was wrong, all the while keeping cool heads and trying to determine what aspects of the team's gameplay needed to be worked on. Sasha has established himself as the best player in the world, and others regard him just as that. That's why he wants the team to play accordingly. That's why this is important. He's quite demanding, but I don't consider it a downside because that's totally understandable. He wants to be the best, and he wants his team to be the best. I think what makes Sasha stand out is his aggressive style of play, since he's not really a fan of sitting back, as well as his game sense, his decision-making, his in-game reads, and his movement. All of that combined makes him excel. It's just as our coach Amy said, there are three types of players. The first one being hard-working player, the second one is a talented player, and the third one is both combined. Sasha is that third one, since he's both hardworking, he plays the game a lot, and is very individually talented.
Yeah, if I had to describe Simple in one word, I would say perfectionist, and I would say that because he spends a lot of time perfecting his game, really playing FPL, always trying to become a better player, and he's done that ever since I heard of him.
I met him in Berlin before I joined the team. And Sasha came off as a very sociable person, which I didn't expect. And also energetic both in and out of the game. He struck me as a really cool and talkative guy. We were chatting about some game, I don't recall. When I got on the team, Sasha would help me with game-related things, pretty much bringing me up to speed and sharing his experience. Clearly, I wasn't Tier 1 material when I just came in, as I'd never played at this level. And whenever I was experiencing a situation for the first time, he'd offer his take on how he would play it out. And I would listen to his advice and adjust it to my own game. The most memorable play was in Katowice when Sasha pulled off a 1 versus 4 clutch against Team Liquid. The vibe was insane. We were so hyped, sitting there next to each other as 5. Blade also joined in. It was really sick. And I think as far as highlights go, this one stuck with me the most. There's a Japanese philosophy called Kaizen, I think it's called Kaizen, that focuses on continual improvement and getting better every day. It does sound like Simple, in the sense that he's highly committed to the game. And I think he has a competitive spirit simply built into his DNA.
Man, I don't give a f about 70 kills, just please. Yes! Please, please, please. Yeah! Woo!
This is manifested even in some gambling things, and always trying to be better than anyone else around him. I remember he would even play paper, rock, scissors for money back when we were on Flipside Tactics, or play PlayStation to prove he was better. In a way, it's reminiscent of The Last Dance, the series about Michael Jordan, who was all about competing. Getting that thrill and energy going and proving something to himself and others. I guess all this constant competitive drive is what fuels you to keep going at the end of the day. He enjoys being number one, and he is obsessed with winning. He gets bummed when he loses, and mostly that's because coming in second is not good enough for him. He loves being first. Right now, winning tournaments with his team is far more important to him than getting MVP awards or the #1 spot on HLTV.org. All he cares about is winning as a team, and preferably as much as possible. You know, his dream is to win a major. And I get it now. It takes a lot of practice to be able to get it done. I mean, nothing is achieved without putting in the effort. So yeah, it's his job. And it's really very important to him. This is his biggest dream. It's like winning a Grammy, or it's like winning an Oscar. He's kind of like Leonardo DiCaprio. It took him so long to win an Oscar.
Of the 6 majors that Simple went to with Navi, go look it up. I actually think, and this is a controversial statement because think about Coldzera and Get Right and all these players that have won majors. I think Simple is actually the best player at the majors. His stats are unreal, and it doesn't matter who he's playing with. Even before he was in Navi, he was posting banana stats. The sad part is this. The closest he actually came to winning a major was probably before Navi.
It was when he moved to the US, and they had made it to the final, the one which they lost to SK Gaming. We were watching the game, and I hadn't quite realized what it meant to him at the time. But I do now. And I found myself rewatching it, and seeing him in tears on the stage. You know, it's not just about winning. I told him, Sasha, there's going to be another major, and more tournaments as well. You're going to win. The opportunity will come. Top teams come and go, and everything changes with time. He said, Mom, you don't get it. Had I won that major, I would have been the youngest player to ever win one. I'm not going to get another chance like this. I will be 19, 20, or 21 years old. And then it dawned on me. All in good time. I guess we just weren't meant to win back then. We were up 15-6 and 15-9 against the Brazilians, but then it ended up losing both maps. Then they went on to the grand finals and destroyed Navi. That was the most frustrating major ever.
The one everyone forgets is MLG Columbus, because obviously there were 2 times at map point against Luminosity, who did win the major, and if they'd have made the final, they actually would have played Navi, who had Guardian, who just had his wrist problems, and basically he very much underperformed in that final. That's why they didn't win themselves. So if you go to when he's in Navi, there's obviously the 2 times when they were in real position. Like one time he made the final, Face It London. That was a pretty exciting one. The problem is they were playing an Astralis that at that point in time I think was basically unbeatable. Like, I don't think anyone in that... There's a reason why no one took a map off them in the playoffs. Like, that was one where the bracket also meant there was really no business for Navi to be the finalists there. They were maybe like the 3rd or 4th best team at the time. They just got this bracket where they were the best team on that side of the bracket. But there's obviously teams like Team Liquid, maybe FaZe Clan, that people thought could give Astralis the best challenge. So I don't blame him for that one. That's one where the bracket just sort of made you look like you failed in the final.
I mean, losing at a major is very painful because of the sacrifice you do, and especially now we're talking about Simple with the time he puts into the game, right? So getting so close, crossing the finish line, right, is definitely tough. And yeah, I would say like losing a major final is probably the worst feeling. I haven't tried it myself, but losing finals in general is really tough. Also because you're so far in the tournament, and the next tournament kind of starts almost directly after it, right? So we don't have that much time to reflect about the result and maybe also try to see the positives in it, right? So yeah, it's definitely tougher losing in the final, and especially the major final.
Let me put it this way. Every major final Navi has made with me was like, this is our chance. We're winning this one. And in contrast, every defeat was very much devastating. Even I still haven't fully gotten over this. Losing a major final hits the team harder than not having made it out of the group stage. You're just one step away from winning and making your dream come true. But you end up losing again and again and again. It's tough to take, really. Losing to Astralis in London was no exception, obviously. We had a pretty good form at the time, and we were putting in pretty solid work on our foundation. I don't know about the others, but personally, I was certain we were supposed to win that one. We came ever so close, but then ended up falling short again. Well, what can I say? At the Face It Major in London, when we lost to Astralis, I think it seems like we weren't mentally and psychologically ready for what was ahead of us. We were playing too tentatively and timidly, and it's almost as though something was pressing down upon us. Some other worldly force.
The tough one for me and the real killer has to be IEM Katowice 2019, because this is the one where he was playing unreal from the beginning of the tournament right to the end of the tournament. And that was the one where, if everyone remembers, he basically was single-handedly carrying Navi to the final against Ents.
The moment he lost that clutch against Ents and had gotten so upset, when I came across it on the web, just watching it was so painful, and it made me want to cry. You have to watch that video just to see how devastating and heartbreaking it really was. It's a really short clip. It was a crucial round in which they ended up losing. And Sasha's emotion after that simply says it all. Yes, every loss takes a toll on him, but it's also what unites him and the club. Navi and all Navi fans always want to win, and that's something we have in common. But yeah, it was an incredibly frustrating defeat, and even more so because I believe we had what it would take to win that tournament.
I think if he'd have made the final that time, the reason I think that one would have been interesting, because not only was Navi very, very good still at the time, but for me, the key thing is, that would be the second time in a row, by the way, you faced the same Astralis team in the final. So the first time you faced them, there's all the pressure of like, I'm a massive underdog, we're not even really supposed to be here, they're supposed to win, they win everything. It's tough to do that. The second time round, if you're a great player, you're not allowed to have stage fright every time. The second time around, you're supposed to know what it feels like to lose. You're supposed to know how good they are. And you're supposed to say, right, fuck it. Let the chips fall where they may. I'm just going for it now.
As one of the characters in my favorite movie once said, I hate losing more than I even want to win. I suppose it can also be applied to Sasha, who also hates losing, and he is also really demanding. I don't know. Maybe it's just the trait of a champion. Any loss, it doesn't matter what opponent or what stage it is, it's always going to be a tough pill for Sasha to swallow.
s1mple almost never complained in interviews about the team setup or teammates. What he would do is when he would lose, and he would have the best performance ever, but lose in a final, he would go on the interview and go, the other team played better, and I actually have some things I have to work on myself, and if I could have done something on these couple of rounds better, maybe we would have won. He took all the responsibility on himself.
He might get over-emotional during or right after a game. And it's because every defeat affects him personally. But it takes him maybe a few hours or even up to a day to get over it in the right way. What I mean by that is that it's done in a constructive manner. Playing at this level of competition for so long, you're bound to lose every now and then. That's just how it works. An important part of your pro career is to learn how to endure losses. The next day or earlier, when emotions have settled down, he takes a constructive approach, looking for what went wrong and ways to improve upon it, which allows him to get better year by year. He's been performing at the highest level for 5 or 6 years now. This approach is really key. That's his way of dealing with defeats and challenges in games and tournaments and his career overall. It's hard to imagine a situation that would make Sasha give up and throw in the towel. he also prevents others from doing so as well, including his teammates and the entire staff working with the team. He always stays the course, and his obsession with winning perfectly matches with our club's philosophy. His work approach really is one of a kind. Not only is he unbelievably talented, which was obviously a massive kickstart for him early on, but also his work ethic is absolutely off the charts. He puts in a lot of graft and possesses an unquenchable thirst for winning that's been driving him his whole career. Perhaps even slightly over the top at the beginning. He craves winning, and that's why he practices all the time. Always trying to improve, know the meta, or even be ahead of it, and be on top of his own game. All of it combined makes him an extraordinary and proficient player. And of course, his mechanical skill, his great aim, barely missing any shots, and making little to no mistakes. He plays a pivotal role in the team, and he's incredibly consistent. I think his consistency is the most unique thing about his playstyle. It's not something that can be achieved by having specific ways of practice, but rather by practicing consistently. It's difficult to explain, but I guess if somebody knew the formula, they would be on their way to becoming a new s1mple. Though, someone who's as consistent of a player is yet to be found. s1mple is, superiorly skilled. He's not just, I don't know, what you could say as a Starix level player from back in 2010. I'd say he combines the skill sets of several great Counter-Strike 1.6 players of that time. Edward, Markelov, Starix, all of them melded into just one player. I remember perfectly how good Igor Markelov was with the op, or Edward's USP magic was, and the stuff Starix did with the M4A1. It's common knowledge that s1mple excels in any role, and he's good with all of that, what I just said.
I think I said once while casting, there's not enough superlatives for s1mple. It's so difficult to quantify someone of his talent level and his skill level in a single word. I think that's a really difficult thing to do. You could use many things: creative, audacious, bold, crazy, daring. But I think the one that I would use the most, and it's what we want. It's what everyone wants as a fan of any sport, whether you're a fan of that individual athlete or you just, maybe they're even the antagonist to you, or the someone that you rival, and perhaps you cheer for somebody else against them, but it's exciting. I think s1mple is exciting beyond anything else, and I think it shows in his game style. I think it's fun to watch s1mple, and the reason that I loved commentating on s1mple and hopefully get to do more in the future is because of how exciting he is.
It doesn't matter if he has a bad start, he will still find a way to get into his game. A lot of the other players you play against, if they get a bad start, they get out of the rhythm. I think that he just constantly pushes in the sense of that he will not become too eager to get a good scoreline. He'd rather just like find his rhythm automatically, and then of course when he has his good games, it's just on another level.
It's better to play with him than against him. Sasha puts a crazy amount of time into Counter-Strike, and it looks like he knows every little detail about the game as though he's experienced or seen all of them at some point in time. I mean, he basically knows everything. Sasha's style of play is all about aggression, insane plays, and unpredictable moves. If it comes down to a 1v1 situation and you try to predict every move that s1mple will make, somehow, some way, he'll still end up surprising you. It looks like Simple just does crazy stuff, and yet he does it with absolute confidence. He's incredibly confident in his aim, and that it's him that's going to win the round. I remember Sasha's clutch on Nuke. It was 1v3, I think. But I don't remember who it was against. I think Sasha will remember it when he sees this. He was pushing in through main with 15 seconds on the clock against 3 enemies, holding Hut, Squeaky, Vents, and then he took him down in a flash, especially the last one. The round had looked impossible to win, but I was watching it on my screen and I just couldn't believe my eyes. In situations like this, I would tell myself, man, it's probably time to make way for the young. You can't play like that. Admit it. No matter how much practice or what you do, you can't pull off things like that. Another example would have been against Mousesports at Star Ladder on a T-side force buy when Sasha got a headshot with a scout outside through a wall. I don't know. It's like a 1 in a million chance to do something like that in a video game.
That's simple. That is simple. The guy doesn't do anything by the book. He is so ridiculously uncharacteristic. I mean, the guy jumped out of heaven and no-scoped a guy in Connector, for God's sakes, at a major. I mean, James Bartoff said it. This isn't FPL. This is a major. Who the heck does that? He's knifed people jumping off a balcony toward A main, and Henry's like, oh, simple, of course.
Smoked out, bombed down, everyone chasing down, gets a trap, and the knife comes in! Simple, of course!
And don't get me wrong, there's been times when it's cost him, and one of the most memorable moments I think I'll ever have in my career was Ents was having the dream run at Katowice, and Simple's in a clutch that he already had lost, in my opinion. It was a 1v3, he had no chance, and he sprays a guy through the friggin' box. He just nails him, like, come on. Like, and I think that's when I said this guy's on another level, because it's like, what else can you say? Like, just absolutely stupid that he's able to spray that down. Gets the second kill as well, bombs planted in his favor. All he has to do is fall to CT. If you look at that from a textbook perspective, all he has to do is fall to CT. But that's not what Simple is, and that's not the player Simple is, and that's not why we love Simple. We love Simple because just when you think you've got it figured out, he surprises you, and he does something you would never, ever, ever in a million years expect to see. And he picks up the AWP, gets aim punched, misses the shot, and it cost him, and it cost Navi very dearly. But you can't fault the guy because he tried so hard in that round, and ultimately there was no chance for success, and he made something of the round. So, I mean, that to me is simple. That is how he plays. He's not going to sit back. He's not going to give people a chance to breathe. He's going to jam it down their throats, and he's going to use his raw skill, and he's able to pull those shots off because he's able to see them in ways that other people don't.
Everyone just screams on TeamSpeak, or Sasha goes, what a shot I just hit, what a shot I just hit. They are amazing moments. But funny moments also happen when Sasha says, shh, shh, shh. And then bang, bang, and everybody's dead. Even when there are highlights too, Sasha usually yells hilariously and everyone gets pumped during the play, which might last for 10 or so seconds after the round is over. Everyone is just cracking up, shouting, especially Boomich. Sasha starts laughing at Boomich, and then everybody bursts out laughing. It's a good time.
Давай, давай вместе. Раз, два, три. Вверху бомба. Убей. Туда. Бомба.
I can't really compare him to anyone, like playing style-wise, in terms of his strengths. I think he's genuinely broken the game. And I always tell people like this, if you are a young fan, don't try and do any of the stuff he's doing. It's like those famous disclaimers they say on TV when someone's going to do a stunt, like, warning, do not attempt this at home. These are trained professionals. You aren't Simple. You aren't, so don't try that.
Will be nailed down to 35 HP, but he gets a double kill!
The classic question everyone wants to know, right? Who is the best, Simple or Ziwu? It's the same as, you know, is it Messi or Ronaldo? Is it, I don't know, LeBron or whoever, Kevin Durant or LeBron? The problem is this, right? It's a really hard question if you don't have a really good eye test and you don't know the history of Counter-Strike. Because what you'll see is, stats-wise, before this year, Ziwu's right there with him in 2019 and 2020. If you go off results, sometimes ZywOo's team's better. Sometimes Vitality was winning tournaments. They were the top placing team at times, maybe until the end of last year when Navi came on a little bit strong coming into this year. So if you go off those factors, you're going to say, well, pick which one you prefer. The problem is this. If you look at what they have to do in their team, in my opinion, nobody is good as Simple.
Both are quite the same. Like, you have a supporting cast of both players, and it's tough just looking at with the success you've had with both teams and defining who is the best, who has the most impact. It's kind of hard. Like, sometimes when you have the best player of the year, I think it doesn't really translate into what do you mean, like the truth in some way. You need to look at the success of the team. You need to look at the different tournaments rather than looking at a year as a whole and a season as a whole. It's hard to pick one, honestly. Like, I think that they're quite different in their personalities. Simple, demands more, I would say. It looks like he demands more from his teammates and probably is impacting in a positive way, hopefully. It's hard to see when you're not on the teams, whereas ZywOo seems like a more passive guy in his personality, and that's also a good thing to have. You can't have too many egos on the server.
But for me, Simple is the best player in the world. ZywOo is the closest we have to that, in that he is incredibly sharp with his aim, seemingly consistent, and I would argue that ZywOo possibly has more game knowledge, or game sense, I should say. He's able to really kind of read the play and work his way into the round, and set himself up for success without doing anything that's too out of character. He's very more textbook, I think, of the two, whereas Simple is just ridiculous.
Another thing about Sasha is that he's been among the top players in the world for 3 years and becoming #1 once. He's flying high now, but I can't say the same about the French. ZywOo was named the best player of the year, but his team hasn't been doing so hot lately. They've run into a snag while Simple keeps going, and that's why he's better. We're actually similar, Sasha and I, in terms of personality traits and habits. I suppose that he's a dreamer and he's fully committed to the game. He's a fanatic who is truly passionate about what he does. I also used to be like that as well. Back with my team in 2005, but we were young, about 20, 23 years old, playing for Prosto, Virtus Pro. We'd sleep at internet cafes. It's a well-known story, and there are even some funny pictures of that. It was winter, and those were difficult times and conditions, but at the time, we couldn't care less. We didn't give a hoot about where we were staying or what we were eating. We would wake up and we would play Counter-Strike. We would sleep on these chairs and beds in this internet cafe, but it was always chat about CS. You know him as a player, but we know him as a loving and caring son to our family and to the ones that are closest to him. He never talks back or argues like these kids going, "Oh, come on, Mom." It's really just not in his nature. He knows what Mom and Dad mean to him, and I'm not even talking about his grandma or his grandpa. He treats us with so much reverence that, I don't know. Even if we leave out being #1 in esports, he's just a wonderful son. Then he went on to join Flipside Tactics, and they were going to their very first LAN that was supposed to be held in Denmark. But then something didn't work out, and they headed to Voronezh instead, where they ended up placing first. I remember all of this like it was yesterday. Oleg, his dad, came down to the station to pick him up. Sasha got the prize money paid out in rubles, which they then exchanged for grivnas. He got home and put the money on the table, 15,000 or 18,000 grivnas, around $1,400 or $1,600 American at the time. I don't quite remember how much exactly. "Mom, this is for you. That's for Dad, Grandma, and Grandpa, and Uncle Slavic too." Then he goes, it seems like I've got nothing left for myself. Oh well, whatever. That's what he's like. When it comes to money, I can say that Sasha is a person with a great deal of empathy. I know this for a fact, and I've only heard of a few cases of him donating, but I'm pretty sure that there are way more that I'm just not aware of. How much does a person need to be happy anyway? Definitely not that much. Yeah, sure, okay. Everyone has a different idea of happiness. Someone might need a swimming pool in their yard at their house, whereas oppositely, I would be happy to have a house even without a pool, or an apartment, or a car, or an e-scooter. It doesn't matter. That's just not my idea of happiness. And you can tell he's not driven by money, and it's always been like that. Back when he was leaving Team Liquid, people would say, dude, you're in the US being paid a huge wage. You get to go shopping for the latest sneakers and post it on Instagram. You're living everyone's dream life. They just couldn't comprehend how he had given it all up to move back to Kiev. He didn't just return to Kiev, but he also got on worse players, which ended up playing at Starladder in the stadium as a mixed team because Team Liquid didn't want him to play for their potential rival. You could tell he wasn't going after the money, but rather fame and wins. It's an aspect of the game that just captivates him. This is the most important thing, and while money and what it's spent on helping or not helping others is more of a personal matter. But one thing I know for sure is that he's a man of immense empathy.
If we win, if we win and I have no new record, it's okay.
No, he never talks about the game at home. He always asks questions. How's your health? How are you doing? What are you up to? Showing concern. He might even give me some advice. I once said, I have to go clean the pool. And he went, just get a robotic cleaner. Why do you need to do it yourself? As for the Counter-Strike, if I ask him something, he will talk with me about it. If they win, it's good. But if they lose, it's better not to bother him. Sasha is not someone who talks or plots against you behind your back. He chooses to always say things directly in your face, and, well, and sometimes, especially back in the day, he'd do that in a harsh manner. But, nevertheless, he's actually just being blunt. It's also important because, at least you can be sure he's not going to go behind your back. If something is wrong, you're going to sort it out right here and right now. So yeah, that's one of the things about him.
You can definitely see a personality change where he is more calm. He is like he has this rumor of being toxic in the start of his career, and I would say at least that like he's very friendly. He always says hi. Even though we don't know each other, he doesn't know who I am as Nikolai, and I don't know him as Sasha, but we know each other as Device and Simple, right? We have a respect for each other, and I would say he seems like a very humble guy for his position, which is a unique thing because he has been different to that, and that's just a big personal growth for him, and yeah, of course, like you don't always get to know all of the pros in the scene, but to me, he's always come off as a great guy.
I mean, if we call someone the greatest of all time, right now it's him. He's won all the titles. He's won all the titles and has achieved a lot.
Him and I will message each other occasionally. We'll, message whatever it might be. But anytime I actually get a chance to sit down and actually talk to him, it feels like no time has passed. Like he's still, even after all his success and even after all this time has passed, like he's still the same like little brother that I remember him as when we were teammates. And when we would travel on Liquid, him and I would always share rooms. So we've talked about a lot of stuff, and I feel safe, and I feel like he's somebody that I could always talk to. And if I did need to reach out to someone, he's definitely a person that I know would make time for me. And obviously it goes the same way. If he needed somebody, I would always make time for him. I think that right now, especially with like how my Valorant career and streaming is going and how his whole Counter-Strike career is going too, we both don't have much time to just be able to talk on a normal basis with the time zone difference and all that stuff. But I would love to be able to talk to him more. And yeah.
Hey, Simple.
Our mission is simple. Take them out.
Yeah, I'll message him. He's a nice guy. Age is the only way for Sasha to play on a great team. That is the only thing that could help. I've played with inflated ego players a lot, and that's not necessarily bad. Maybe it's their ego that allows them to become the best. However, it doesn't change on its own, or by punching that person in the face, or lecturing them for 3 hours a day. No, unfortunately, it changes over time, or with experience. Looking at Sasha now, I see that he's got everything. An amazing team with the support of the organization. All he needs to do is win a major to prove to himself and everyone else that he deserves it. And that's when a little bit of luck could go a long way. I'm sure that not a single esports fan would say that he's not warranted to be called the best player in the world, or not worthy of winning a major. Speaking of being an idol or a role model that anyone could look up to, it's definitely Simple. I had personally approached him with my brother and his friend and had asked for a photo. He never really... he's always up for it. The way he interacts and communicates and plays the game, he could be deemed as the example of dedication, commitment to the cause, team, and result, as well as the eagerness to win and to get to the top. It's great that the young generation has an icon like Simple, who's so good at Counter-Strike and is a really nice lad outside of the game itself. We were going to Berlin with Sasha and had already checked in at the airport. I kinda lost sight of him. It turned out that he had gotten approached for an autograph by this guy and his mom. The guy looked about 18, and I heard the mom say, "Gosh, it's so nice to meet you. My son is a big fan of yours." I was astonished. Later, as we were walking around Berlin, we'd take pictures and post them on social media. And some Russian-speaking guys would use the geotags to track down our locations and come by the restaurants and cafes we were at. That was really fun and exciting. So, yeah, it does feel good. I could not possibly be any prouder of my son. He sets an example of how someone can reach great heights both in the game and media-wise. We often hear people say that engaging in media activities gets in the way of playing. I don't want anyone to bother me, just let me play the game and lay off me with your interviews. But it's quite contrary. In Sasha's case, yeah, it might be hard to get him to do an interview because, as I said, he doesn't have enough time for that. Yet he manages to juggle and be successful in both. Really setting an example of how it can be achieved simultaneously and in the most efficient manner probably serves as a huge motivation for all youth in the CIS and beyond. I see Simple as a role model for many aspiring or budding players, since he has an outstanding individual skill that hooks youngsters and makes them want to get into esports and even learn about Navi.
Do I remember my best game against Simple? That's tough. I would say that the most notable one is probably the major final in 2018. Don't remember how well we played as individuals, but that's definitely the biggest win we've had against them. But one thing for sure is I remember the biggest loss we had against Navi, and that was in Katowice 2020, where we got completely stomped, I think, in the quarterfinal. So I remember that way more than the wins we've had against them.
It was the first tournament with me as a coach, and we had just put together a new roster. The win had been a long time coming, following the shuffle with the new Navi era replacing the old one. That was our first triumph, and that also made us realize that we were a force to be reckoned with, and that we could become the best team in the world as we stomped through the competition, showing everyone what we were capable of. It was a powerful memory, and we saw a bright future ahead of us. From where I stand now, this Navi team is the best team in terms of skill and talent in the past 10 years or so. Probably since the roster of Zeus, Edwards, Starix, Markelov, and Senya. Right now, the game is more involved, and the overall level of skill has increased. But this roster is so incredibly stacked, and they've got what it takes to win the major.
Right now, I think, is the best chance they have. I think this Navi roster is when we get back to LANs and we get back to normality, I think this is the roster that absolutely has the best chance. So we'll have to wait and see, but I think the future for him is bright. I think this roster, if they can keep it together, if they can keep the personalities intact, if Counter-Strike can get back to normal, I think that not only does he absolutely have a shot at a major title in his future, I think he's got a long future as well. And I think that, as long as he continues to be a positive influence and to accept that responsibility and accept the influence that he has now, I think that he can be very positive for Counter-Strike moving forward.
This journalist had asked me when we were sitting at our home if I believed that Sasha would become the best player in the world. I said, "You bet, bro, 100%. I'm sure he will, but it takes time." Later, when he did become the best player in the world, I was reminiscing about that interview with a smile on my face, because it was actually resonating with my thoughts. What I see now is a very powerful roster. Counter-Strike is not an individual game, and if they keep putting in the work, I'm absolutely certain they will win a major. 100%. It's my dream, just as everyone else's in this organization. And as a colleague, as a brother, and as family, I want him to win a major so badly. Because he really needs it.
The only times when Navi was like the #1 team in the world was basically the event right before we had to go online, so there's no more majors, unfortunately. I would love to have seen that next major. That would be very interesting. And beyond that, I mean, it's basically just been this online period, hasn't it? So technically, if you're not the #1 team, you don't have to win the major. The problem is, if you're the greatest player ever, at the end of your career, if a fan didn't watch you and they look through the history books, maybe I write my almanac of history, they're going to see, oh, he's the best player ever, he does everything. And they're going to go, where's the major? Where's the best championship? So, listen, you can't escape it. You do basically have to win the major at some point if you're the greatest player ever, for most people, whether I agree or not. So I think in the future, it's basically the goal that he has to accomplish.
Why you bullying me? You fucking me.
I really only got to know Sasha recently. We were playing Warzone together, and I keep remembering the last IM tournament where he would play Warzone at night, and then wake up the next day and post a 2 KD against the world's best teams. And he says, "I'm really good at gaming." Well, right back at you.
I think one of the things I didn't realise when I started doing Counter-Strike events is how much I would like Simple as a person. And when I talk to Navi fans, I always wanted them to know that like Simple is actually a really cool, nice person. And yeah, I definitely didn't expect when I started doing Counter-Strike that I would call him a mate, but I like him very much.
You know, I remember that during our boot camp, prior to a lot of important events, including the major, we decided as a team that we would give Simple as much freedom as possible in the game. And so he wasn't doing any very important roles in our strategies and the system we created. And to be honest with you, I don't even think that guy knew half of our strat book back then. But, you know, well, we did it because, you know, first, we thought it would be better for the team. And secondly, because, you know, let's just say that back then, that guy didn't enjoy that much structure around him. And, you know, I think he already knew that he was a special player. And, you know, he just wanted to have fun and kill people on the server. And just, you know, he was already, like, probably the best player in the world. And he just didn't need the game. Like, he just jumps from heaven. Like, and while he's mid-air, he just kills Dennis with an AWP. And then when he lands, Crims is shooting him from the entrance, and he just non-scope screams and wins around. And, you know, that moment, the stadium went crazy. Like, the energy we got from that was just insane. And, you know, I remember this was a very special moment. And in that moment, I knew we would make it to the finals, you know. And, you know, after that tournament, he gave me this mouse, which I kept for many, many years. And it's just priceless, right? And, you know, I'm just very happy to see his development as a person and a player. In my opinion, he is the most talented player to ever touch this game.
You just watched a movie about the greatest CSGO player, Simple, who can be insanely skilled, insanely funny, and insanely toxic. I hope you love the movie. Simple, I hope you get a major this year.
He has both a lot of fans and a lot of haters. You know, just yesterday I was scrolling through the comments at cybersport.ru about the last Cologne tournament that we went on to win versus G2. I always read the comments and enjoy seeing the community rejoice. It's really exciting, and it charges me with positive emotions. Obviously, though, his haters are also there. I realized that his fan base is increasing along with the number of haters, some of whom have been around since 2016 or 17. When I read the comments, I like that feature that you can click on in a user's profile to see their comment history that they've left on the forums. In every tournament, they go something like, Navi won? First place? Oh, you don't even know what's coming next. Hey, Sasha. This is the first time I've ever done something like this, ever. Like, I've never done anything even remotely close to this. And I am so honored to have been a part of this and to have been even in consideration, much less do it in the first place. So thank you, and thank you to Navi for making this happen. Sasha, I just got to say, man, I don't think that anything could slow you down. You know, I think that you are the best of the best when it comes to the game of Counter-Strike, and from the sounds of it, even outside of the game as well. I don't think there's any mountain or any task or, you know, feat that's too tall for you to knock down and really chase down to the very, very end. I think you're going to continue to own the world and show us what's up. So until next time, Sasha, good luck, have fun, and do svidaniya.